Kia ora no tātou. Sir, naturally we support this bill, and it does follow that it can do with a few improvements, not the least of which, sir, lies with the very thoughtful contribution offered by my colleague here, Mr Stuart Nash, because up and down the country people on fixed income are facing pressures. And those pressures, sir, they are definitely going to rise over the next 6 to 8 weeks. Now, Mr Foss is right in one respect. The gales of rhetoric across the House, they'll go on, etc. But what won't go on, sir, is the ignorance about what the government's agenda is in relation to fiscal policy. Come October, the changes and the cost rises will begin to bite, sir, and never mind what we say in the House, that will affect people's pockets and that will affect their perceptions as to why did the government decide to shift the base of its tax revenue to consumption, whilst at the same time, sir, borrowing from the international capital markets to fund its tax cuts. That, sir, cannot be explained away. And it's unfortunate that the spirit, sir, of companionship which my colleagues on the committee showed to Mr Foss and his confreres hasn't carried over, etc., with the extension of the savings debate. No, the Savings Task Force, sir, is required by the 20th of December to report back. And that is actually, sir, going to cover or obfuscate the gaping hole in the government's thinking. They've now outsourced, sir, to the Deputy Reserve Bank Deputy Reserve Bank Governor, Mr McDonald, and a host of other identities out of the commercial world. They've outsourced, sir, the responsibility of finding answers that they can take forward to plug the gap. Because whilst they're now running the rhetoric, sir, of which this bill is a small part, that a problem is capital accumulation in the New Zealand economy, they have found themselves either unwilling or incapable of deriving ideas amongst their own ranks, or they've probably found, sir, that within Treasury they already believe that there is no savings crisis. So rather than showing, sir, as some of these small changes do, which were largely Labour policy anyhow, and this is just a small set of minuscule changes, sir, grafted onto the architecture that they've inherited in terms of our savings. But there's a deeper point, sir, at stake here. And that point is, if you share the view that a problem in our economy is capital accumulation, then why did you make the retrograde steps, the decisions, should I say, over the last 18 months to actually disincentivise people to save and also undermine our own domestic sovereign fund? And those two, sir, decisions show that they acted in a panic-stricken state and have never had a strategy to deal with savings. Now, I accept that a number of the identities in this task force, they do have a positive contribution to make. But it will be a contribution that they will be required to make within, sir, within the pipeline of the government looking for ideas actually to take to the next set of elections. And it's actually a tragedy, sir, that taxpayers' money funds are being used to subsidise this crowd and their absence of any either intellectual rigour or any, sir, original thoughts as to how New Zealand deals with that deficiency. Now, sir, I want to come back very briefly to the suggestion that we ought to offer relief in relation to GST application on rates. Now, Gordon Copeland, a colleague of the current Minister and the Chair, warbled on about this at length, which probably meant, sir, that the idea was never going to go anywhere. However, having said that, he had that and a host of other ideas, but given the obvious skill base and a host of other very positive attributes represented in my colleague here who is bringing the idea forward, the idea has obviously come up tight. So it's disappointing, sir, that the government is actually not addressing, quite apart from the refinement changes here, some of the deeper challenges, and I dare say, sir, they're incapable of doing it, because it seems as if they're gripped by a whole set of systemic problems and they're unwilling, sir, to move on from the mantra of the 90s, but at the same time, sir, unwilling to embrace a new either paradigm, sir, Mr. Chair, new set of ideas to move New Zealand on into its next phase. And quite frankly, sir, strip away the refinement changes here and Mr. Dunn's contributions, etc. Deep down, this architecture does not significantly differ, other than the parsimony shown by the current government, does not deeply differ from what Dr. Cullen sought to do in the early 2000-2001 and bring forward the original contribution to arrest the decline of our savings. Now, sir, if we seek to achieve the things that Mr. Brownlee and others tend to talk about from time to time of boosting the productivity, etc., of our firms, that cannot come unless, sir, we have access to capital. And ourselves, unlike the Prime Minister, we've grown quite tired and quite apprehensive, sir, about the flood of international capital about to be shepherded through, no doubt, by the current government and their unwillingness, etc., to stop the sale of our farmland to overseas interests. That, sir, no doubt, will be an item that we fight vigorously at the next election. But, sir, we are no longer in the camp where we see a worsening current account deficit and a laissez-faire attitude by the current government that they don't mind where the capital comes from. We actually want to husband sources of capital in our own country, and we want to build reservoirs that give meaning to people when they say that they actually want to feel they have an ownership stake in their own economy, their own community, and indeed the overall society. So that's why, sir, broadly speaking, we are supportive of the refinement changes, but we're not supportive of the other agenda, which really is to meander forward without a clear sense of direction, in the absence of any compass that gives confidence, sir, to the next generation, to the mokopuna, our grandchildren. It's almost, sir, as if when you listen to David Carter, he contemplates a future where our country is one large farm and the Prime Minister contemplates a future it's one large hotel. Well, sir, that's not our view. We believe that in order to grow our wealth, you do need to deepen and broaden the diversity of the goods and services that we create. But you cannot drive, sir, without a decent reservoir of savings capital that can be deployed to suit the agenda of New Zealanders, not suit the agenda of nameless, faceless international fund managers, sir, who don't care at all for the national interest question of New Zealand Aotearoa. Their agenda, quite rightly from their perspective, is to find opportunities, exploit them and grow the wealth of the funds that they hold. But if anyone, sir, tells us that we should embrace indiscriminately, sir, the portfolio theory of investments, I tell them to go and look at the actual record of many of those portfolio theorists over the last 5 years as we've watched international wealth and capital melt. Sir, that's why there's a key distinction here. I'm sure that there is a desire amongst a host of our colleagues on the other side of the House to advance the savings debate, but we differ, sir. Our desire is to ensure that the savings are deployed to develop our own country, not all sent overseas, but to develop our own country and endowments, sir, that can create value. Sir, it's time, sir, that the current government stop trying to cadge off the ideas of Dr. Cullen, and actually put forward a debatable point as to what is their vision. Ours, sir, is to continue to husband savings, but to have it disproportionately deployed on issues at home, to create enterprises that actually build new firms and create more jobs. Sir, none of that actually has happened to date as a consequence of the current government taking an approach to economic growth, to fiscal policy, driven largely, sir, by a panic-stricken reaction to the point that not even the business or the corporate community know any longer what the government stands for. But, sir, on this side, in relation to the savings debate, and of course Kiwisaver is only one element of the savings debate, but it's the most innovative, sir, there will be no ambiguity, no vagueness as to where we stand. We support the bill, but there's much unfinished business.